fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with unleaded 88.
We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
And hello, awesome show lined up for you guys today. I can't wait for you to hear it. This was a lot of fun. I interviewed a buddy of mine, and you will know him as the dad of Rocco Becht, Iowa State quarterback. He is also a legendary player in his own right. He spent a decade in the NFL. He's a Hall of Famer at West Virginia, and he is currently the head coach of the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL. Of course, that's the former XFL, Spring Football League. And he's just a really, really inspiring and insightful guy. Of course, we talk about his son's career at Iowa State, everything that's going on there. But Anthony and I in today's CW Pod, we also dig into the UFL and his aspirations to be a college coach someday. We talk about just football stuff. We geek out on football, which is really cool. I've been wanting to do this for a while and really excited that Anthony gave me about an hour today to dig into everything. So enjoy it on this week's CW Pod. Of course, we are always in the Channel Seed Studios and presented by our friends at Steeple Ridge Bourbon. I am currently holding the black label in front of me right now. And if you are at a liquor store and you see the handful of Steeple Ridge bottles, I would recommend this one if you drank whiskey before. If you're new to whiskey, I would recommend the white label to get your feet wet just a little bit. But this black label is my go-to. It is an incredible bourbon. If you go to a liquor store and they don't have Steeple Ridge bourbon, request it. That's the number one thing you can do to help our friends at the Lonely Oak Distillery. And they're really loyal with us, and we love promoting Steeple Ridge bourbon here on Iowa Everywhere. Probably should send a bottle to my friend Anthony Becht because he was awesome. This was a really fun interview. It was incredibly insightful as to, I mean, you really learn where Rocco got it from as far as the football chops and the competitiveness, and it makes you even more bullish about Iowa State's future after you sit here and you realize that Iowa State's starting quarterback is, talking to this guy multiple times a day. He's super bright. We can all learn a lot from him. Anthony Becht joins me today here on the CW Pod on Iowa Everywhere. Well, we are fired up for this one. I've been wanting to do this podcast for well over a year. Even before Rocco Becht was Rocco Becht, I was excited to get my guy Anthony Becht on here, who is, I guess you're Rocco's dad now, or is Rocco Anthony Becht's son? How does it play out in the family, I guess?
Nobody cares what I've done, except I had my Hall of Fame deal at West Virginia. That was like the one moment shining it wasn't even a 15-minute moment. It was a 2-minute and 50-second moment. I am totally good with it, but I can't tell you, no one cares about me anymore, which is great. I mean, everything is my son and Rocco, and, I call Jets games, even the Steelers, everybody, just anybody I see, it's like, man, your son, so it's cool, man. I'm so proud of them. It's, when you play this game at a high level like I did, and you're a first-round pick, and you've done things in your life, and you have kids, and I have got hundreds of teammates that have kids, and they want them to, play the game they played and be great at what they do. Like it's like you got a 10th of a percent of actually just maybe accomplishing something there. And to watch Rocco, what he does at his position, because I was just a tight end. I could make glaring mistakes, and you wouldn't jump on a podcast and crush me for my mistakes, because you would have no idea what I would do, right? Because it's just, you missed, I whiffed on a block. Nobody cares. You don't see it. Only the coaches and your players and teammates see it, and they're the ones that critique you. But, to elevate yourself at the quarterback position, to battle the mental hurdles, right? I think it's easy when you go out and play, because it's you're playing the game you've always played, but you do have a lot, day to day, practice to practice, from a preparation standpoint and the media standpoint. There's, you're the one that's going to get interviewed and all those things. So you have to be able to, put those things on your shoulder. So for me, yeah, I've been Rocco's dad, honestly, since the end of last season, but it is a good deal, man. It's fun, and I'm happy with it.
The game on Saturday night, I would guess, just as a dad, that had to be the most proud you've been because of the overcoming adversity thing. Only in this, Rocco missed a lot of throws in that game that he normally makes. Sure. It wasn't all his fault. The line's getting blown up a lot. Those Central Florida guys were really good up front. But to have the wherewithal to extend plays the way that he did and to just gut it out. I mean, he puts the team on his back in that last drive. I mean, he's not even my kid, and I was proud of him on Saturday. And I thought it was just a really cool the way that all played out.
Yeah. After the game, when the players kind of come out before they shower sometimes just to say hi or whatever, he came over and had a big hug and we talked, and man, he was just let the emotion out, man. Cool. It was pretty cool experience. It's a surreal moment because every player, when they're playing and if they get to start and they become whatever they are at their position, you're always going to have a few defining moments where like it can trigger you to another level. It can take you places that, if you're in that moment, you're able to be elite because, at the quarterback position in that moment, I've watched for everyone that's actually been able to drive it and finish and complete the deal and win. You've seen 15 other ones that the storyline was true. They didn't play well. He didn't have his best game and they lost. And that's what happened. So absolutely. His expectation level is super high, man. We talk about it all the time. I mean, as soon as he walked out and hugged me and he looked at me, he said, man, I suck today. Like those things, when it matters to you that much, we're in a time and an age, and I'm coaching guys. Like when I walked in to a film session or the next day after a game, and I knew I balled out and graded really high, there were maybe 2 or 3 plays, maybe insignificant to the world, but to me, it made me sick that I had to sit there and watch my fellow teammates and coaches have to critique that because I knew what I did wrong in that moment. And I graded out 95%, and I had a great game. Not a lot of players have that. It just doesn't bother them as much. Rocco has that, and that's been ingrained because that's important. It's got to matter to you that you missed a tight seam down to Higgins up the hash, or you kind of underthrew a ball or whatever it was, but In the bigger picture, though, what's great about it is I actually felt like he played his best game because the hurdles and obstacles in the moment when guys have to step and do something, everybody played their part, man. He doesn't get to throw passes if guys don't catch it in the offensive line. And the defense was spectacular. I mean, the stops that they continue to give him to get the ball back. And I was just praying, man, one more time, like one more time. And it's hard, man. Those guys, look, they were running the ball really well. It was a little bit of a mismatch there once that back got in the second level and the quarterback as well. And it's difficult, man. We know all the injuries, and those guys are just playing over their heads, and I love it. I love seeing it. They're well coached, and I'm proud of the fact that Rocco's a part of that kind of culture. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly proud moment. I have never, and I mentioned this before to you guys, I've never had anxiety as a player. Nerves. You always have nerves. You don't have nerves going into a game. You're not a ball player, right? But like as soon as you start going, or you catch the first ball, or you throw the first completion, whatever it is, you're like, okay, we're going now. We're here. As a coach, I don't feel anxiety because it's all about the preparation and all about how you feel about your players. But when I'm sitting in the stands, I got my wife, grabbing the hell out of my arm every single snap. Like everything matters when you're the quarterback. And, for me, I want them to do so well. And I know there's always going to be pitfalls on every state. You can't win them all, man. Jesus, like, it's the one position where, if you make it incomplete, you're like, oh, it should have been complete. But I watch Joe, all these guys are making incompletes all the time. It's just the game and the position itself there's a lot asked of it. And, to battle. And listen, you can go back, you guys do your analytics. And I feel like if you go back to every interception just disastrous play Rocco's made in the 2 seasons that he made. I want to say they've either scored a touchdown or scored a field goal or did something really quick that he was able to shake that off.
Absolutely.
In particular, last year, I just remember as a younger player, this just bounced. I think Iowa was one where he bounced back on the next. Just in those moments. So, I mean, that is a unique trait to have. It's not. I didn't gift that to him. Okay, my wife didn't gift that to him. Like, you got to have the mental capacity. Campbell talks about it all the time to overcome those things. Besides quarterback, a cornerback, a corner, right? Or whatever it may be, and a goalie in hockey. Like, who else has to have that kind of mentality? So that continues to grow, and I think this is only 20 games in for him. He's still a very young, growing player. He has not maxed out yet, and he is still growing and learning every week. But to have that in that moment, it was awesome.
This year kind of stands out to me about how really the whole team was just frazzled, right, in that first quarter. Had the wherewithal in that stadium to do what they did against that defense down the stretch. I thought that was a huge growing moment. And then, I would like to go back to, Coach, what Taylor Mauser said after the game to our Randy Peterson. He said that Rocco, which this is a huge compliment, Rocco hates to lose more than any person he's ever met, which that's crazy. Like, Brock Purdy played there, right? Taylor Mauser's coached all these NFL tight ends. Where did that come from? Did you see that when Rocco was playing Pee-wees, or has he always been like that?
Well, I have to take the credit for this because I try to dominate everything we do. Like, I never let him win anything when he was a kid, right? Like, you either earn the victory or you don't earn a victory, right? So Monopoly, cards, putt, like, even to this day, and now he's much better at these things now. Like, I take as many L's as I never have in my life. But, it's to the point where it's so aggravating to my family the way I was, because they're like, oh, you're a cheater, you cheat, and this and that. He had to have got that from me. And now it's just, I see it all the time because he constantly, like, darts, whatever we're doing, man. Like, he is just a vigorous competitor. But yet he is, like, the most, on the flip side, like my wife, the most humane person, like, giving, caring. But in the moments of anything, like, we may be just throwing a freaking soda bottle in a trash can, like, he will dominate and figure that out, and I was to nauseum. That's how I was. My family hates me. My immediate, like, my parents, my cousins, when I was growing up. And listen, you had to be, if you don't have a competitive juice in you, you can't make it at the highest level. You have to live your life like that. Mm-hmm. And he has no choice. Like, that's in his blood. It's been there. And I would say that's where he gets it from. I got to take credit for that. Good. Among other things that he's gotten from my wife. But yeah, he loves it, man. He loves to compete, and you have to be a competitor if you want to advance in any sport, to take it to the extremes you want to be in your career.
What is his process like as far as preparation? Because I know that differs from quarterbacks. And I guess, how much do you have to do with it too? I know you're not in the room coaching him every day, but when he's preparing for a game, can you walk us through what that's like for Rocco Becht?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane. I would say it's got to be more than a majority of quarterbacks in the country, because, myself, Chad Pennington, one of my best friends, a great mentor, a great quarterback, someone's very close to our family. We just came up with this. It's kind of like you go into Meineke and it's a 26-point inspection, right? Well, he's got a 25-point list of things that, we've talked about, and he's gone through since he's taken the job over, that Chris, must have answers for. If just one of them, Chris, are not answered, or there's some confusion, whatever that, third down and short, the different levels, or the red zone or tight red zone, or whatever it may be, if he is confused or doesn't have that answer, then he is not ready to play. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And guys are going to get by. Guys are going to get by with some things. But the amount, and it starts Sunday after the film has been watched about the game and the chapter's closed. He's kicking in, the next game, and it also, not just the prep from the game standpoint. And there's a process every day, like it leads into everything leading into the week to Friday. but also the body. I'm really heavy with him because he knows the process. He knows how, and he's put his little wrinkles on the things he needs to learn and for the week upcoming games. But now my thing is the body recovery. You know, I crush him with hydration because, you know, he was cramping up last year with warm games in his calves and like, you know, I don't know how he doesn't have a deal with Pedialyte, but I basically brought Pedialyte to the Arizona Cardinals back in 2009 and 10 because I would drink these little one-size bottles of them, and we had a fridge of like 6 a week, where all of a sudden now we had basically 2 full fridges of Pedialyte. The whole team was drinking them throughout because I just feel like the importance of just staying on your body, you know, like massage treatments, anything, getting in, doing the little things, the shoulder exercise, all those things comprise the whole package of performance. And if I can teach that and pass that along to him now at a young age, I was even busting his chops because I saw Jalen Noel was kind of cramping the last 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, get that guy on your Pedialyte regimen right now because, you know, it's a difference maker. Because listen, he's got all muscle. These guys, they don't have a lot of fat in their body. I like to have a little body fat on my body, man, because I knew I needed that saturation. So I didn't pull as many muscles. But the guys that are like yoked up, they pull things real quick, and soft tissue is a real deal. So those are the 2 things from a prep. But his prep from a football standpoint, again, and there's a lot of good players out there, and I'm sure they have their ways and their coaches have guided them. And that's not just he's got the stuff the coaches put on their plate, but all that stuff is compiled in those 25 things that he has to know every week. And I don't ask him about them. I ask him questions. And the answers give me what I want to hear, and he's always on it, man. So, and it starts tonight. We'll talk tonight. And hey, did you get the glance? Nah, you know, but like for instance, and I hate the reel here, but do a little project in the bye week, right? Like, go look at all your sacks and all your runs. Are you falling properly? Are you taking care? Are you getting on the left shoulder instead of the right shoulder? You know, how are you getting out of bounds? I thought he ran well. I mean, he slid. I mean, and you can't trust defenders because they're always going to take some shots when they can, even when you slide. But how can you protect yourself if you're falling backward? Grab your face mask here. Like those little things, just critique those things because it will be important. Because if you're trying to make a push, you have to stay healthy as a quarterback, and you can help yourselves in those moments.
It's interesting you brought that up because I wanted to know, as like a coach, he's been really effective with his legs the last few weeks. I mean, thank God that Rocco had the ability to extend those plays the way that he did on Saturday night. Otherwise, Iowa State probably loses that game. Even a lot of his completions where, you know, he's making 2 or 3 guys miss, extending this plays. He's taking more hits than he has, which is, on one side, it's good for the offense, but on the other side, that number 3 is really important to this football team. What's your analysis of that? Do you want him to keep doing that from a football standpoint, or is it a only by necessity? How do you look at Rocco's run game?
Yeah, you know, I think he does have a unique ability to do those things, and he's always had that. He had it in high school. We have a lot of film where he's done those things in high school, extend plays. You know, I mean, not only is he, you know, running well, he's making people miss. He's got some juke moves, which we've been laughing about the last couple of weeks. But listen, Chris, like I can, you know, people are like, oh, you got to add that into your game. We don't see him do it as much. Well, honestly, you don't see him do it as much because a quarterback's supposed to win from the pocket.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you got to be through your prep and everything you do. You got to make the pass when it's there. I kind of compare it. You look at a guy like Caleb Williams as a small example, like, you know, all these great things that, you know, out and running back and forth, like that's great. But did he miss the slant right off the jump? Like, you know, I think Bill Belichick did some great breakdowns of guys like right off the jump, like, oh, all that was cool. But if he just hits the check down or whatever it may be, he gets rid of all that disaster and that high risk stuff. So I think every time I've seen him run, and even if people want him to do it a little bit more, it's all because it was triggered by something else. The protection broke down. He had to extend the play. Like it was nothing where like he was just doing it to do it. Like, so, you know, that's where you want to have it. You want to have it when you need it. You want to have it when it's there. And they have sprinkled in some quarterback runs, design stuff, which again, I'm fickle with. I like them when they work, but when they don't, and he takes a shot, I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Right. But it is needed. And I think these last 2 games really will help this offense because that factor now is a problem. You can't just turn your back in man, and maybe they get some less man and those things work out. So it's when it's needed, he can do it, Chris. And that's when I try to say, like, that's when you have to do it. But man, you got to win from the pocket if you're a quarterback, and that's ultimately your goal, and he has to be great at that.
I think, too, that Central Florida D-line was probably the best one Iowa State will see the rest of the year. I mean, those guys are you know better than me, but the two guys in the interior looked like pros. I'm hoping that they can take a big jump during this bye week. And yeah, where do you think Rocco's at as far as just if you're scouting him right now, if he's not your kid, right? Like where is he at and where can he get? Because I feel like as good as his offense has been, I think there's a whole other layer. It was wild the other night. Like they had 530 yards, and I never quite felt like they were really in rhythm. But it was, they're getting chunk plays. There's a 50-yard, but I never felt like in a lot of that. I think I credit Central Florida's game plan and their defensive line greatly when it comes to that. I always say the other team has 85 scholarships too, right? It's not just us out there trying to do this, but yeah, that's why I'm bullish for the rest of the year because I don't feel like they've quite hit that stride yet.
Yeah, listen, I talked to Taylor a lot after the game, and I think he's done a phenomenal job for a first-year guy. It's not easy. There's a lot of good players on the field. I think he's been great with the movements, the motions, the multiple personnel groupings that he has. I think the one thing that really makes him really good as a first-time play caller is he listens. He listens to Rocco. They have good conversation, and he's very candid. Just listening to him speak to you guys but about like, hey, like I screwed that up. Like he doesn't care about that. He cares about what's best for the moment, the team, himself improving. There's no ego. I'm in the coaching business now. I've seen it at the highest level. Coordinators got ego problems, man. Like they just it's always point. And it's very easy for a coach to sit there and say, well, damn, you got to get your hands inside. You could have made that block a lot easier. But I remember times like, well, my hand didn't get inside as a blocker because this and this and that, and like these things in the game. So he is a guy to me that understands. He coaches very well because, yeah, he puts a high demand on the technique and what's asked. You got to do it right the way you're coached on it. But as he also understands like these guys are out there busting their ass, trying to do their thing, and he's trying to get the perfect play and do all this stuff. I think overall in the moments, a lot of these plays and things that he's done has been really good. And I just think as a listener, man, that's your key for all coaches is when you have guys that are mature. Rocco's earned the right. Last year, I maybe wouldn't have listened to him as much, right? But you earn the right to do those things. And when you do, that's when you can grow and improve as an offense, a defense. When you got those guys like a Bo Filer that can talk to Haycock and those conversations, like those are the kind of players you dream to have, you want to have. But when their opinions actually make sense. And, and they're still college kids, are still learning. The listening factor, which I think this staff does really well by still holding players accountable, is really good and special.
I want to get on to your work with the Jets, the Hall of Fame, and then I want to talk Battlehawks too, and just because I think that whole league is fascinating, everything you guys got going on there. But to kind of wrap up the Iowa State conversation and that part of this, you guys have an interesting story is how you all ended up in Ames, the recruiting aspect of this, because I just want you to be able to tell it here. Why is Rocco at Iowa State, kid from Florida? What ultimately led you guys to Ames?
I think there's a big field of love, number one, from early on from schools that initiated the process. Mm-hmm. You get those early offers, Chris. They don't really mean much, Teams see something, they're like, you know what, we'll throw it out there. We'll watch how he grows in, junior, senior year, and we'll make a decision. He probably had 10 offers after his sophomore year by the time his junior year started, where you're like, okay, there's a few deep, Wake Forest, Iowa State, Southern Miss, guys that took the time. And then from there, it's building relationships. And then you have the other schools that came in, after his junior year, like, hey, I get it. Like you start to see something, you acknowledge it, and then continuing to just learn and grow. But, I think for us, we really had a plan going into this thing. Like we believed right after sophomore year, like you're going to be a guy that can do this. Let's plan for it. And you start looking at schools. What's their roster look like? Like, what does their depth chart look like? Where are they playing? What's the scheme they're running? Like, is it advantageous? Is it pro style? Honestly, I'm not a big fan of college spread, but I do like, the hybrid pro style that you mix in now some of that spread stuff. So schools that do that, I really like, because you see the NFL, Andy Reid, these guys do this now. That we're a West Coast hybrid for our team. We're implementing college things, but we are true pro. The verbiage is different. We just try to simplify it now. So, but the coaching staff, we didn't talk to Matt early. We talked to Joel Gordon. He was, Tyson Voigt was the one that came to school, and he's the one that gave the scholarship. But, once we had figured this thing out before his senior year, we were like, all right, Iowa State's the school. And really, when we called them, we're like, all right, let's call Joel and see if we can get Matt on the phone and tell him, hey, look, we want to sign, seal, deliver this thing. We're ready. We've gone through the process. Ole Miss, whoever offered late, like, we're not there. Like, this is where we want to be. Everything boxes checked. Now, coming from Florida, going to Ames is it's difficult. But, man, like, I think – and Rocco was a little homesick early on. I would expect that. I mean, man, it's different now, right? It was free. It was below 8 degrees below and snowing when I dropped him off. And he had never seen snow. But when we called Joel, I remember we kind of got on a conference call and Rocco was like, hey, Joel, like, process is coming. My senior year is coming up. We've gone through all the factors. We kind of know where we're at. Like, I want to commit now. Is this a committable offer? And I think it took Joel back a little bit because I don't think he had the necessary ability to say, oh, well, you're ready to pick already. Like, okay. And then like, okay, well, I don't know. Like, hold on for a second. Like, we love you and everything, but we don't really expect that to happen right now. Went back, got with Matt, and I think they speed process, like reevaluating and say, okay, make sure this is where we want to be. And then all of a sudden, like, Matt got back to us a couple of days. We had the meeting and he's like, hey, let's go. Like, we want to make this happen. So, I just think for Rocco, man, he was just committed to the process of just understanding. There's some schools that came in late, but ultimately, man, like, he's all about that love, relationships. You want to go somewhere where you feel that love. And I just felt like Iowa State, that's where I would play as a player. It's a place where I would go. And we looked at it, like, Deckers was there and we said, okay, we'll compete. If he becomes a starter, we can get 2 seasons out of this bad boy. Like, that's all we need. Start 2 years. That's the goal, because that's when he'd be done. And then things happen differently, right? So when your opportunity comes, you better be ready. And he was always preparing since day one. And that's how it kind of went down. I mean, it was no real flipping a coin. Other schools, we weren't pulling 9 hats out of a bag. Like, he was out and focused what he wanted, and he picked Iowa State, and it was mutual.
As a dad and as a coach, how do you view everything else that's going on in college football? Where I guarantee you a guy like Rocco and 15 other guys on that team could have gone and made a ton of money playing somewhere. We've seen Iowa State guys leave, go to the SEC, go somewhere else where they don't have the cultural fit, they get buried. How do you view the portal? Not only that, but in the NIL era, as far as weighing what's right, what feels good to you, what makes you comfortable, and the development versus taking money, because there's a long-term play that I'm assuming a lot of guys don't have a great background like you and Deanne to lean back on, right? How do you view everything that's going on?
It's challenging. And Rocco trusts us to help him in that process. And again, like, I look at it a couple ways, like, okay, like, I didn't really peak till later, right? Rocco's peaking now. I can't guarantee Rocco's going to the NFL. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Like, do I think he can? Absolutely. But I don't know. He's not there. There's time for that. So as you look at it, like, I'm sitting here, okay, I'm a guy that's made a good amount of money in my career, invested, took care of things financially. Like, I teach Rocco the pluses and minuses of saving your money and the ways to save it and the way to grow it. And, God, if someone called me up and like said, hey, we're going to give you $5 million to come, I'm like, man, like, as a father that's teaching my son how to be financially sound in his life, like, to tell somebody no to that would be crazy. But there are other factors. He's still growing as a quarterback. This is his 20th start, right? So he's still developing. A lot of guys back from last year. The pieces are there to continue that growth. And really, that becomes ultimately the school's responsibility to continue to excel in that, right? And they are. I think Matt and Derek Hoodger, those guys they're on it. Like, and I have no problem with the portal. I have no problem with NIL. I said that a bunch of podcasts last week when I was at West Virginia, just talking about the Hall of Fame stuff. Like, my goal, I want to be a head coach in college. That's my goal. I'm trying to expedite that process through the league and platform that I have now, and we'll talk about that later. But I love this space because I can offer a lot in all angles of these things when you're talking about growth, where guys want to go to the NFL. That's their goal, right? Like, how do you grow and help someone get max that out and know what that path looks like? You know, to help guys make decisions in life. You know, as a coach now, I'm basically 70%, 30% psychologist for my football team now. These guys got issues, man. Like, and as the younger they are, Chris, you got to be able to have a conversation with guys and help them in that aspect without thinking greedily about football and winning and those things, and how you can kind of combine those things to get the best out of that player to help him on the football side, to help them grow. So, you know, I want what's best for Rocco, and I want Rocco to make the best decision because it all aligns properly and it makes sense. But we love Iowa State. We love Coach Campbell. We recognize the loyalty that Coach Campbell's had at this school. And that helps a lot because, you know, I'm an old school guy. You know, I get that. That's hard to do. It's hard to turn things down and to be there. And if I'm Matt, and I've said this to him before because this was part of the recruiting process, because I was candid about asking him, like, what are you trying to do? Like, where are you trying to be? Like, you trying to be this coach? You trying to go Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Pittsburgh Steelers? Like, what is your end game? And I really think he just wants to build a long-term legacy there. I mean, money goes a long way in Ames, I think, right? So you can have a really good life. Kirk Ferentz is making a crap load of money, and he's the king of the state. Maybe changing, right? Maybe changing as we go. And I think I'm sure he's had some opportunities in his career as well, maybe at the next level. But it's always going to be there. And, hey, maybe there's a point for Matt. It makes sense, you know. But until that happens, man, that's part of the factor too. So they love Rocco. Rocco loves being here. He's focused football. Like, it's all football, man. Like, and that's what it's about. But, you know, in the offseason, man, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of, like, this guy's making what, or this guy's doing this. I think, you know, the school boosters, the program, are doing an excellent job of understanding the changes, and so is Coach Campbell as well, because you can't survive in just the traditional recruiting anymore. And I've seen the growth, and they've done a really good job of plucking the perfect players to come help this football team the last 2 seasons. And you know, that's a big deal. So you know, for Rocco and myself and our family, like, everything right now is in a great spot and a great place. And I just want him to be happy, man. As long as he's happy, you know, that's the most important thing.
He seems like it to me. When Mauser said nobody hates to lose more than him, I believed it. But I also, the only side I ever see of Rocco is he's smiling and he'll kind of give me a little hug, and like I just see the, like, soft side. But I'm not on the field. I'm not in the locker room doing all that good stuff. You have an interesting job. Being the St. Louis Battlehawks head coach, I'm interested in the psychology of that, because it's like is the goal of that league? I don't know about the goal. You want to send players to the NFL, right?
100%. I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my Vikings just got beat by a UFL kicker the other day. It kind of really interesting. Yeah, he comes out and kicks a 44-yarder in Minneapolis.
Me in my opening game last year, I thought he would never, and I iced him, and he still nailed it home at 16.
The psychology of that's because usually when you're like a feeder system, it's like a minor league, like where you're part of an organization and you're working with them, right? Like the NBA's G League or whatever. How walk me through that. Like, what is it like to be the head coach in the UFL? Because it's just different. We've seen spring summer football in the United States before, and it's never really worked. This feels like it's got longevity to it. There's people watching because of you and all the Iowa State connections. Like, it's like appointment TV for Iowa State fans. Yeah, walk me through, like, what is the core mission other than to just win football games, that 70-cent psychologist thing you're talking about there?
Yeah, well, you know, one, I take the opportunity very seriously because there are a lot of really strong hardworking, been through the rigors, other coaches that could have gotten this gig very easily. I was a very out of the box hire, and respect the fact that Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, Redbird Capital at the time with the XFL, I was able to get in front of those people. And it was not an easy process to get in front of the people that matter in any walk of life, to talk to a president of a company or whatever it is when nobody knows you in that aspect of the coaching world. But man, the day that The Rock and Danny Garcia and purchased through bankruptcy, I think it was August of 2022, I turned to my wife because I did have experience in the AAF coaching in that league. I love that spring concept. I told my wife, I'm going to be a head coach in this league. And she looked at me and she didn't laugh. She's like, you know what, honey, you deserve it. You should go get it. And I'm like, from that moment on, I was just driven, and I just started finding the connections, the 6 degrees of separation between me and Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Russ Brandon, the president, and all those guys, Mark Ross, who started that league. So, and once I got there, man, I had a great vision. I had a plan. I've been writing down stuff forever because I did want to coach. My daughter's in college, my son's in college. There was I've been doing the NFLPA Collegiate All-Star Games for 10 years. I had a lot to offer in that aspect just through my experiences on and off the field. I've been through 5 organizations in the NFL, 7 different head coaches in those 5 organizations, 2 firings midseason, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I really listened intently of the messaging and everything I had. And I was just generally like a natural leader of men. Like I was brought to Kansas City to fix a tight end room at the end of my career. I was brought to Arizona to fix a tight end room at the end. So those things are always there, right? So I was always kind of learning that on the go, even as a player. But yeah, for me, I want my whole team in the NFL in a training camp at the end of the season. We're not per se, we're our own entity, first of all. The league is obviously, they're always going to pan off. We got 60, 80 guys in training camp, and we're not cohesively together. And it's hard because think about it. If we start merging and becoming the NBA D League or whatever it is for the NFL, let's say they send a tackle or quarterback down and we get them. And then all of a sudden, okay, that guy blows his knee out. Like now you got workers' employment things where it's like who's responsible. Those things are always going to make it tough. But for us to just, have the support of the NFL, they utilize our league and they look at our players to shoot them up and bring them up. And then I can call them or they can call me and say, hey, what are you looking for? What do you got? Do you have this guy? And then I think it's huge. It's great for our coaching staff. It's great for our officials, all of that. So this league is needed. The thing is, when your own entity and you're not really being carried by the NFL, it's expensive. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see the disasters happen. Now, we got a lot of money behind us, but you got to find a way to kind of trim down the burn of that money by year 5. I think year 5 is the goal where they want to sell off the teams, make it ownership in the cities, all that stuff, and that plan. And we're not there yet. We'll see. We're still going to house and hub in Dallas and all that stuff. But for me, I love helping players in this league grow because they have been great. The Hakeem Butlers, the guy's a legend in Iowa State. He's not a legend in the NFL. He's looked at as he wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. He comes to our league, and through his hard work and a lot of discussions, and it's a lot of messaging. I'm big on messaging. I intently have a message. I think it's key for guys, even at that age, to hear things, to strike them. And listen, I can't stand up there and reel on like I'm real with you with these topics. I got to hit it hard. I got to hit it quick. And I got to read the audience real well because I got a lot of guys in my room that man, I know they're turning me off. It's just those kind of guys. But they also have to grow in that aspect too. But now he's a star in our league. There are players now that are excelling at the highest levels, but they're still really far away. Hakeem Butler gets to the Steelers last year and the Bengals, but they're not going to use him in training camp like we do. He's going to go to X. He's going to wait in line for his chance, and they're not going to move him, put him in the slot, do these different things to help him be great because they don't have time for that. So it's going to be hard for these guys to trickle over. One day I hope we can converge a little bit better. They maybe allocate. We all have certain teams. Mm-hmm. But these guys are – a lot of them have holes. A lot of it is the mental side of it, is the lack of belief in what they can do. If I can help those guys believe and have success and, kind of circuitry their minds to make another push, like Mike Rose, a perfect example. this guy should be in the NFL. Like, I'm just telling you now, if he should be on at least special teams for somebody every week. He's not. He's frustrated. He's a hardworking player. He gives it his all when he's with me. And he's, I'm like, listen, Mike, why don't you come back one more year? Like, let's just run it back. I get it. You're frustrated. You're not getting your chance. But, man, like, who cares? Like, let's go win a chip next year, man. Like, and who knows how? Because Mike's the kind of guy, like, when you get towards the end of the season and he's playing well, he's worried about it. He doesn't want to get hurt. He wants to make sure, he's done enough. And like, now I'm like, hey, like, let's just throw all our chips in, man. Like, who cares? If you're like, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. Like, let's put it all in on this league. So those are conversations I got to have. And we don't have these drafts. Like, I got to recruit preseason cut guy because I want guys that get cut from the preseason. That's how I want to load my roster up because I want the guys that are that close, right? And I'm calling and reaching out to like dudes that are waiting and getting workouts every week, every other week, and trying to say, hey, listen, if you don't get signed by X weeks, you need to come play. You need to come with us. Guys want to play for us. That's not a hard sell at this point. We've done a really good job. The fans, however I've sold it, whatever it is, the exposure we've gotten as a team, but we haven't won a championship, and everybody is always being evaluated. And now that I've done it 2 years, we know how to do this thing. So now it's like, okay, how can we get some better players? How can we upgrade? How can we get better? And again, once we bring them in, I'm trying my damnedest to get them to the end. And it's hard, man. Guys that don't play, that come in my office every day, like, coach, like, I need a chance. Why aren't I out there? And you got to be honest with them. And I'm like, you got to give them the big picture. Like, son, if you're not with us, I can't trade you because this team doesn't want you. Like, stick with us. Keep the grind going. Push forward. It only takes one injury to be the next dude. And we've had guys get tryouts for just starting 2 games on our team. So you don't need a lot of film. You just got to show something. But, I feel bad because I only get so many players. I can only play so many guys. I would love to rotate guys in if I can. But, man, like, we're also trying to win once that competitive spirit goes through. So that's what this league is about. And that's what it is for me. And other coaches want to do that. And they all got their – whatever. But I'm the one guy that's probably out of all the head coaches in our league that is striving for greatness and trying to excel in this platform because, Stoops, great mentor to me, great friend to me, and he's helping me. But he's done, right? Like, Ken Wisenhunt's been brought on. He's done. Like, he's doing his thing. Wade Phillips, he's done. Like, I am emotionally attached to this. Personnel-wise, I'm on it. Like, every day, me and my GM, we don't do anything without each other full on it. Like, Stoops and these guys aren't looking at personnel. Go make our team. I'll show up and coach. Like, I'm trying to win now, and I got to be a part of that because if I'm not part of it and I lean on somebody else to do it and we lose, then I'm going to have regrets. If I lose and I fail, it's because of me, and I'm a part of it. I can live with that. So that's where it is. That's where our league are, and I got to win a championship, man. That's the goal. So we're going to try to do it next year.
You got a bunch of people in Iowa who are rooting for the Battlehawks. I can promise.
We do. I love it, man. There's a lot of Battlehawks T-shirts, flags up in the tailgate, and they come up to me. It's fun. I love it, man. They come up and watch our games, and there's a big St. Louis, Iowa State fan base in St. Louis in that area as well, which is really cool. Well,
I'm getting to a game this year. I'm going to bring the girls down, and we're gonna do that. Walk me through. I'm a child of the '90s. Okay, I remember sitting in middle school reading the Rock's book. It was called Know Your Role. So you're trying to get this role. You walk into an office with the Rock and Danny Garcia. What is that like?
Well, that meeting was the first meeting and the last meeting of getting the job because they hire all the football guys. Like Russ Brandon is the CEO president, right? So it's getting the Russ. Now he's been with the Buffalo Bills for 20 plus years, and he's seen me play against them. So we know each other, but we didn't know each other, right? Mark Ross was a longtime scout in the league. We knew each other, but we didn't know each other. So all of our connections allowed me to get to Mark Ross first. Mark Ross lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, because he worked with the Giants personnel. And I was calling Jet games every week. And I said, look, every week in December, this was late 2022, I'm going to be in Jersey for the Jets games. Tell me what day works. I'll come to you. Let's have coffee. Pounded it. Had some common people. People were kind of, all right, hey, he picked the first one I gave him. The first one was like 2 days. So I came in early. A quick cup of coffee and breakfast turned into a 6-hour conversation. And now I knew I made my stake there. Now it was just playing the waiting game. waiting game, because they're getting ready to league. They're growing everything. They're trying to get all this stuff going. And then ultimately you start hearing names, coaches and stuff like that. And then finally I got to Russ Brandon. I was in the Super Bowl out in Vegas, or no, LA. It was that 2023 season, I think. And me and my wife were out there for the game. We're hanging out for a couple of days, had a good time, former teammates. Russ Brandon's out there, and we had a random call, and we had talked and stuff. And prior to that, because of our relationships of other people, that he's like, hey, I'm at the Beverly Hills Hotel right now. He's like, can you meet me at 4 o'clock? It was like lunchtime. Let's sit down. You know, we're moving here. We got some things. I was like, yeah. So we sat down there. And he started saying things to me that made me believe like I'm a finalist for this thing, but yet he wasn't like giving me the job, you know? Mm-hmm. He's like, look, this is the last step. I think everybody on our side loves you. We love your passion and vision, and we think this may work. We just got to get this sold up top. And then from there, get you in front of, and really Danny Garcia is kind of like the Roger Goodell. So she was the one ultimately, this is the last line of fire. So that was after the Super Bowl. Couple of weeks, I just was patient. I didn't bother anybody. And then all of a sudden I get a text like 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, and it's Danny Garcia's assistant. She's like, hey, we want to set up a Zoom call with Danny Garcia. I'm like, oh, wow, this is getting real. You know, I was like, okay. Get in front of the Zoom, and there's no interview. She was basically there to tell me, like, she's like, Anthony's like, we've done our homework. We've listened and watched and talked to everybody. So I just want to let you know you're the new coach. You're going to be one of our new coaches for the XFL. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. That's because, awesome. And I gave you the abridged version. The way the loopholes to get to those points were extreme. And I was just incredibly thankful. Now, I didn't know what team I was going to get. They didn't tell me what team I was going to get. I just figured I'd get one of the, you know, Memphis, or a team that was like, you know, just a team that wasn't, you know, they gave me the best team and they knew it. See, St. Louis had done great in the first year.
They did, yeah.
In 2020. And they gave me that team. They're like, look, we love your passion. You're great on social. We just think all those things tie into really making that city great. And I was like, hey, like that was part of my selling plan as well. Like the other stuff that I do, you know, people see me on social and all this stuff, like in the closed doors and in my serious stuff, like I get both sides. Like it's needed in our league. I'm trying to help the league grow. I'll get on and make a 5-minute, a 2-minute video. It takes no time for me at all. Like coaches don't like that crap. You know, they just don't. And I get it. Like, you know, I'm okay with go shaking some people's hands and meeting people in St. Louis and all that stuff. So I was like, if I got to be your PT Barnum to help those things out outside of the stuff that coaching I know I can do. But man, it's been a great platform, a great opportunity. And like, I'm serious about it. I'm really, you know, I've had some opportunities to go to the NFL. I just passed on them. I want to continue to be a head coach. And that may be tough to jump to a head coach right off the jump in college, but there are some people throughout the landscape that it may work for, may not. And if I got to make a different route, then I'll think about that. But right now it's a great schedule. I'm coaching in the spring. I can watch Rocco. I can call Jet games. I mean, like, dude, I got like the perfect, and I get off in the summer. I can vacation in the summer. I got a teacher schedule when it comes to that. So it actually works out really good.
Well, and I feel like too, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the like credentials of being a college head coach feel like they've moved quite a bit in 10 years I mean, you're seeing, especially in college basketball, we're seeing a ton of these older guys who just don't want to deal with all the new stuff. I mean, you've seen what Deion Sanders has done. Right? Like even like Jim Harbaugh kind of started it all, where he went from like non-scholarship FCS to Stanford. I want to say is the jump that he initially made. Do you, because it just doesn't feel like, oh, well, you got to be a coordinator and now you got to be this, right? I feel like a guy like you is going to have a better chance to jump in there now than you would have 10 years ago.
Yeah. And, you know, I just look at NFL wise and sometimes at college, like coordinators are the one that get their jobs at the head coach. I believe special teams coaches should be more looked at in the NFL side. These guys deal with players. You have to deal with people. I know the game, and you got to be situationally sound. I lose sleep over my vigorous studying of situational football because that is my job on game day. I don't call plays. Now, I'm involved in the plays throughout the week. I'm going to give them 3 or 4 things like we're doing this, and it gets in. But everybody's got to do their part so that game day everybody functions properly. My coordinators know when we're going for it on fourth down. There's no wishy-washiness. They know, hey, right now, hey, you got 2 plays if you don't lose yards in this third down play, or how that's going to look like leading into the game the night before. With Donnie, like our DC, like I just listen and watch, and I make sure I have my questions intently after every game. But I also know with Donnie, like how we're going to play off each other and make sure they mesh well. So, but situationally, and with our league, like you don't kick extra points. You go for 1, 2, or 3. Those things there's no analytics to that right now. Like you got to be really good at math, and you got to gauge on like what is Stoops going to do if he's down by 5, because that's like probably going to happen, or whatever it is. Like if he scores, will he go for 2 and just be like, so I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always looking at the scoreboard, thinking about numbers. And then you got the challenges. You got to be able to, you can challenge a penalty or a non-penalty call. So where are your eyes at? Like, what are you looking at? The replay person at my stadium is different every week. I don't have the same person. So it sucks. It's like I yell at my SID guy because he's the only one that can talk to him, but I can't get a correct replay when I need it. But there's a lot of transparency in our league, which is good with Dean and Pereira. So we're always kind of connected, but you can win and lose games if you see something there that's not called, strategically. When do you throw that golden flag that we have? So I think all those things are a lot easier in the NFL, and sure as hell a lot easier in college to make situational things. And I'm a more aggressive guy on fourth down. I trust my players. I trust my defense. But I have a gut feel like, you know what? Hey, it's early. We haven't got a first down yet. Like, I just don't know if we're ready yet. Our defense is playing good. Punt the damn thing and let's just roll with it. And I think, my coach is like that as well. So, the college side of it with the portal and the NIL stuff, like at some point now with this whole lawsuit, money's going to be it's not going to be per se equal for everybody, because Alabama and Georgia are still going to get money from their donors on top of it. Mm-hmm. But for what Iowa State needs and 85% of the other schools, they can make it work now. Now it comes down to coaching, Chris. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you separate yourself from every college coach? How do I say? I just know like a lot of my coaches are going to be former NFL players that are really good damn coaches that have really good ass careers, and they know the game, but they know how to communicate. Not all of them do. There's a lot of good players out there that know a lot more ball or did a lot more great things than I did, but they don't know how to bring that down to a level to really help someone grow with it. They only know one way, the great way, right? They forget about what it took to get them there. So a lot of our coaches, Leroy Glover, we have Ricky Prohl, Bruce Gradkowski, Gino Gradkowski's got a Super Bowl ring, our O-line coach. Those are the people I want to learn from if I'm a player, because ultimately when the money's equal, they want to go to the league. How do you get them there? How do you get them their best? How do they learn the systems that they're in that they can see? When our players sit in our meetings and we're drawing up and doing our offense, they're watching Bengals plays, they're watching 49ers plays, they're watching Andy Reid plays, and we're just growing off that and building our thing there. But those are the best teams' offenses in the league, and that's what we're delivering for our players in the Battlehawks. So we can deliver that same thing and still be creative in college. And now your guys are going in with verbiage and understanding of what they're doing at the next level. That's a great sell from guys that can show it, do it, and deliver it right. So that's my play right now. And as that vision goes, once it's all equal, I just think coaching becomes the difference. And what are those characteristics you can bring, not just by me, like the days of like getting a recruiter on your staff that maybe not a great coach, but he's like this guy that can get into the high schools. Like, I just don't think that works anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm the guy that they need to talk to now because 12 years in the league, been a coach in the league. I know every GM, every head coach. Like, I talk to these guys on a week-to-week basis. Like, they're going to listen to me. They're not going to listen to a guy maybe that's your recruiting dude that has great ties in the state of Florida, but, the running backs aren't great coached because you're the running back coach, right? So those are the times where I think things are different, and that's got to be listened to by ADs and folks in the college game as this game continues to change, right?
Doesn't feel nearly as regional as it used to be either. I mean, it's like Iowa State recruits the hell out of Utah and Arizona, and it used to be like, well, there's only 10 players in the state of Iowa, and Iowa's going to get 8 of them, and right, like it feels like you're just getting guys from all over. It's just the world is so much more global, right? And I don't, from that aspect. The other thing too, this triggered for me. I was at my daughter's parent-teacher conference last night, and she's great, good report card, good kid. struggling with multiplication facts. And I was thinking back to when I was a kid, and I always knew the multiplications of 7. I could rattle them off because of touchdowns, right? Touchdowns. I've never thought about that. A guy like you's been around football forever. And okay, well, we can go for 2. And you have all this math that has just been ingrained into your head. And now all of a sudden it's go for 1, 2, or 3. That had to be maddening. Like, how much do you have to work at that? It's almost like speaking a different language when it comes to the situational stuff.
Yeah, you almost like you didn't want to just do it to do it. Like, oh, let's just go for 2 every time.
Yeah. Right.
There is some, like, as the game goes on, there is some strategy to it, and there are percentages, obviously, like what are we doing from, how our teams, like randomly, teams aren't going, like we wouldn't go for 3 unless we had to, Chris. We're not going to chase points because we missed something. We're going to play the football game. We really like going for 2 points from the 5, but man, like, it's tough to pass from the 2, but we feel like we can get in from the 2 really easy, but you don't. The numbers just show like it's just hard. So it's like, there was a point midseason where we're talking about like, man, we're kind of shaky on the 2s lately. Maybe we should just go for 1. I'm thinking, well, if you just did the math on the 2s that we've made up to this point, it's still 1 point, 2 point better than going and making the norm average percentage of what people are making from 1 point. So we're still ahead, right? So, but it's like, but game to game, it's different. So it's like, it's also a feel thing. But again, I'm constantly counting because, you're having weird scores. Like it could be 8-6 or 13-9. Like what, you don't see that. It's like, you don't see those scores. So I always check with my guys. I'm like, okay, guys, right. It's going to be 22-14 here, right? Like, yeah, coach. Yeah. So like, and then they'll throw some things at me, but I'm already kind of figuring out like, yeah, you're right. But I think Stoops, he may just try the field goal, cut it to 2. And then if we get the extra point, now we're only down by 3 if they get a field goal. So like, why would you even think about that? But I'm like, our defense is playing well. So if they kick a field goal and they can still win if we're only up by 2. But if we go for the 2-point conversion, instead of the 1, we'll be up by 3. They can't beat us with the field goal if they get the field goal, which they haven't even scored yet. So I don't know. It's just, maybe I'm overthinking it, but again, I love it. I think it's great. And I just don't want to lose a game for my players, and I see it every week. College, NFL, coaches lose games. Good coaches that make a lot of money lose games every week. I don't want to be that guy.
I'd hire you right now. Let's go. I'll be your ops guy. Let's go at it. We'll just get after it. Last thing for me, I thought it was so cool that West Virginia put you in the Hall of Fame when Rocco was playing there. They didn't have to do that. How did that process work out when they tell you that you're getting in the hall, but we also want to do it when your kid's playing here? Walk me through that.
Yeah, Ren Baker called me, the athletic director, and he said, "Hey, I saw he called. We had spoken a couple times since he got in the job the year before, and I knew the call was going to be that because there was a lot of talk. People, I was never saying it, but why aren't you in yet? I say hey, it's going to come at some point. I was hoping it happened before Rocco got to school." And then, or after, even though it would push it out, but, I was like, wouldn't it be great? And I kind of said this to myself and my family before the season, like Iowa State's going to West Virginia. Like, wouldn't it be cool to get the call this year? And I knew for sure, like they probably weren't going to make it that day because there were 7 other athletes, swimmers, baseball players. There was 2 other football players that got in as well. I'm like, it was random, but they called me up and they're like, hey, congratulations, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, this is great. The ceremony is September 21st against Kansas. And I'm like, okay. I was like, look, and I was very nice. I was like, look, I'm not trying to be a diva here. And I truly care about the day and everything. My daughter has parent week at Florida State. My wife's going to that. My son's playing at home game. I'm not going to miss one of his games. Nobody's coming to see me get this thing on the 21st. And they knew, like, there was the conversation, like, you try to glaze over real quick, but I just like, is there a possibility, like, you guys do the whole event, I'll send a video in and have that thing for everybody and make it a special day, and then just make the announcement and the ceremony the Iowa State game, because there were 100+ people going to that game, not because of me, obviously, because they were going for Rocco. And a lot of my family and friends in Philly and West Virginia, they're all there. They just drive there. There's no flying. Everybody lives there. It's within 300 miles and 50 miles from my wife's family. So it'd be really nice if, we could do it. And I said, if we could do it between the first and second quarter instead of halftime, so my son can see it And they were like, you know what, let's talk. We'll talk to the committee. And I knew they were going to do it. And I know deep down inside, they're like, ugh, we got to do this. This is not the best storyline. That's what I'd be thinking, right? Like, you're trying to knock it out and just do it on a day that didn't, but I was just like, they weren't going to say no to me. I mean, I'm like, well, I'm going to miss, that's just what it was going to be. So, and I just got a lot of respect from people there, and people did not want that to happen. They just, the optics of that, even though I wouldn't have made a big deal about it, they would have been bad. So Rem was great. The committee was great. Mike Fergrail, who was part of their SID since I was there, he understand, and they made it happen. And it was awesome, and there was a lot leading up to that week for Rocco. I was worried about just all of it, right? Because there was a ton of family getting to see him live for the first time. There's my stuff and all this play, and you knew like Brando and these guys were going to build up the storyline and stuff like that. I wanted him to play great, because ultimately the goal of that game was for him to win. Mm-hmm. And man, he couldn't have scripted any better. I'm really proud of my heritage and legacy at West Virginia. Don Nealon, I'm glad he was still, was around and with us. The guy's sharp as a tack for 89, 88 years old. He was on the field. I was like, man, if he could be there, that would be great. And my family was there. All my other family members were there. So, but watching Rocco play dialed in the way he was, I just felt there was I learned more about him in that game than maybe other people did, because I saw the focus in his play, and he wanted it, so bad for me too. He wanted to win that game, and he knew he could only control what he could control at that point. But, man, you couldn't have scripted a better night for me, my family, for Rocco, and just incredibly grateful for the West Virginia, and then really just it all tying in together for that week.
Well, I'm happy for you, happy for your family. You've raised a great kid. I've gotten to know him a little bit, and you should be very proud. I know you are. And thank you. We've been wanting to do this for about a year, and I'm glad we finally got to it. And maybe we'll do another one here down the road. I really wanted to bring like a bus of Iowa State fans down to St. Louis or something like that, because
they come now. They're there. I mean, we had folks. They did some auction thing. They had 12. We put them in our suite. We put them on the field. I mean, so when you're the head coach, you can do anything you want, right? So I can get people wherever I want. I don't care. I want more people on our sidelines. The league's like, there's too many. I'm like, guys, we're selling something here in St. Louis. I said, they're not bothering me. Put the rope up. Everybody's fine. Like it's great because, we're something fresh, we're something new, but I love the engagement, and players come all the time just because of the fact we have Iowa State players, and we may be adding a couple more. We'll see what happens there. But,
all right.
That to be continued. But I hope they all come back. The guys we had, they all deserve to be in the league. I'm so happy that every one of our Iowa State players got into a training camp this year. Speaks volumes about where they came from, what they're about from Matt and from Iowa State, and what they're able to kind of do with us and take advantage of those moments and get that second, third, first chance to move on. So I know those guys love the game. They're passionate about it, and I know what I'm getting from them. And then that matters because, as fun and as player coach people think and see from me, there's a high demand, a high accountability for what we do, and they help deliver that message to the new players and the players we have on our team.
Do you hear that from the Jets too? Because not only did they have the three guys, but then they go out and sign Kene as well. I mean, is Iowa State's reputation the same way, like up there?
I think league-wide, I think there is a respect. I mean, you heard Andy Reid talking about Matt. I mean, there is a respect across the league, and it bodes well for players there now that are playing at Iowa State. And, of course, the players that are dominant, they're not just in the NFL. I mean, these guys are making real differences for teams. Montgomery, Hall, Charlie. He was in Tampa last night, playing. These guys are like making, Hummel, Reed. I mean, they're doing things like they're starters. I mean, they're making real plays. Like, they're stars. Some of them are stars in this league, and yes, it does matter. So when I look at that, if you're a recruit, I mean, these are things like, man, like you see a lot of these Iowa State guys. Like there is a real connection there because it matters to these coaches. A lot of these coaches in the league, and it's changing a little bit. Some of the younger blood, this and that, but they're looking for those. They still want high character. They still want hardworking players. And they know sometimes maybe if the talent level is just slightly off, that they're going to make it up in some other ways. And that still holds true, I think, for a lot of head coaches, guys that have been around a long time and GMs. But, listen, they're still talented players. As much as that effort and all that stuff's there and culture is there, they're really good football players as well. And they're not just developing a great culture. I think sometimes people get caught up with this whole culture message. Like, and it's a positive one. It's five-star culture, but when they leave, they're getting five-star players too. Like, these players are getting developed as players on the field. The coaching staff builds football players and enhances what they see it through the recruiting process that maybe other people miss, and they give them the tools. And that's what I'm doing now. And that's why I think what I do correlates to the college level. I love NFL. I don't know. It may be a little hard pressed for me to sit in front of an owner and say, hey, I can be your head coach. But man, look at these teams are running through coaches every 4 years. It's like, roll the dice, right? Take a chance. But I think at some point you are seeing a lot of former players getting these spots, and, Dion and what he's doing. I mean, I don't know if everything I see what he's doing is I embrace, but, I mean, for a guy like Antonio Pierce, like, players like playing with players, but you got to still be able to coach. You still be able to lead. You still got to be able to do the right thing. It still comes down the ball. And that's what I think people think about Iowa State. Like, the culture is grossly underrated because they're really building football players as well, guys that can maintain and sustain in the NFL. It's hard to do. Bama, Georgia, they're always going to have them because they get the best players, man. Like, they still got to coach them up and groom them and lead them. And I'm not taking anything away from Kirby Smarts and the Sabans of the world. But, man, when you come and you look at a place like Iowa State putting dudes in the league and they're actually making a difference, speaks a lot, man. Like, and why wouldn't you want to play in the Big 12 and the ACC? Like, you're talking about your path to success. Like, man, like, I'm all over those opportunities if I'm a player out there, like, and you can still have competition. They're still going to treat you fairly, and you're still going to have to earn it the same way as if you were going somewhere where there's three 5-star running backs you're competing against, where you're going to end up probably transferring if it doesn't go the way you want. So I like guys that earn it, secure it. I like the way Iowa State does it, and Iowa State's not the only school that does it, but man, they're sure it's working well for them right now in this current era.
Well, let's keep the win streak going, baby. Let's keep the win streak
going. Hey, one at a time, man. Knock them off.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. Homecoming game with Texas Tech coming to town. All right, Coach?
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me, man. Go Cyclones.